Hello! I'm once again out in the summer heat because there's been two items of news in the recent weeks that we need to talk about. The first is the vote by the Salt Lake County Council to offer an endorsement and preliminary support for the Rio Grande Plan as an item of future interest and study. This is a really big deal because up to this point, no government organization has voted on the Rio Grande Plan, either for or against, and this vote unlocks a backlog of potential interest in the Rio Grande Plan. Up until this point, metropolitan planning organizations such as the Wasatch Front Regional Council had spoken with us and told us they are interested in the Rio Grande Plan as a concept, but they weren't comfortable including it in their models or plans or any taxpayer-funded studies because it hadn't received the funding yet or it hadn't received the approval yet of any government group. So this vote by the Salt Lake County Council unlocks that, and so we expect to see the Rio Grande pop up in unexpected places from here on. So thank you very much to Fred Jenny, who made the presentation, and also to all the volunteers of Via Rio Grande who put together the slides and the graphics and the visuals and did the checks and the recordings and all the things to make that such a newsworthy event. If you'd like to join the volunteer group of Via Rio Grande, follow our link tree in the description below. The Discord conversation is the quickest way to get our attention. About the newsworthiness of the vote, it's interesting how much press was generated by this vote and how much appetite and hunger there is for some kind of big improvement project to happen. We were scrambling to get enough volunteers out to radio and TV and print interviews for all the reporters that were interested in running a story on us, and that's a very good problem to have. I have friends and neighbors who I used to talk about the Rio Grande Plan and they'd nod politely and change the subject, but now they came to me and said that they'd seen the Rio Grande Plan in the news and were excited that it's actually going to happen. And I had to talk them down a little bit and say it's a preliminary vote. There's still a lot more work to do, and we'll get to that work later. But it's exciting that we're generating so much interest already with just one vote. Imagine how it's going to be when approvals really get started. The second news item is the renderings that were released by UTA of their future potential headquarters building at the site of Salt Lake Central Station. This would take the place of the Intermodal Hub building, which will soon be demolished. And instead, the two office buildings will be built at the station platforms for Salt Lake Central Station, and in the atrium between the two towers, or halves of the office building, there's going to be a space for passengers to wait indoors for their trains or buses and have amenities such as restroom and water. And there's even talk of ground floor retail around the outside of the building so that there will be even more amenities such as food and other services for passengers. And people have asked me what my personal opinion is on this new development, on these new renders. And I have to say that I really like them. This is a good station building for buses. I like the way that it's connected with the bus loop. I like the way that it's close to the freeway interchange for buses. I've said so in the past, I'll say so now again, that because there are freeway ramps at 6th South, 5th South, and 4th South, there is a good opportunity for consolidating. I hope you'll agree that having freeway interchanges on 3 surface streets in a row is a bit excessive. By consolidating all the freeway needs onto 5th South and 6th South, it's possible to completely eliminate the freeway interchange at 4th South. And they can take the space that used to be occupied by the HOV exits where they were and where they are and where they're going to be built, and you can turn those into transit-only ramps off of the freeway and into the UTA headquarters site. That way you'd have buses and rideshare vehicles from around the valley, around the state, or even interstate be able to get off the freeway and go to a transit center, a very good and beautiful transit center that's on the edge of downtown, and you'd never have to have those vehicles cause congestion on our surface streets. It's a very efficient design and something that UTA should look into as part of bus service to their central station. However, there are many lingering issues about the location at Salt Lake Central Station that I have concerns about, which make it less appealing to be a central transit station for the city. One is, of course, that it's on the far edge of downtown, where it's hard to get to. There are not only freeway ramps and bridges in the way, there's also the Rio Grande Depot blocking the path, so pedestrians have a very hard time getting out there. Usually, because of the distance, you need to get on an additional bus or train to get away from Central Station. So it's just to say that Central Station is not a destination that you'd want to go go to even after the amenities are built. It's a place you want to go through and spend as little time there as possible. The other issue is that there are the at-grade crossings, which the trains need to navigate very slowly through downtown to get to this station. And as long as we've pitched the Rio Grande plan, there have been accidents and fatalities between front-runner trains and pedestrians at multiple railroad crossings, and this plan does nothing to address those. So this brings up the issue, why is UTA doing nothing to address those bigger issues? Why haven't they endorsed the Rio Grande plan like the Salt Lake County Council has? And the answer has to do with politics. UTA is still very much in expansion mode. The big rail expansions from the late 1990s through Frontlines 2015 may have ended already, but there's still expansion of BRT routes in Utah County and in Weber County, and proposed extensions of Frontrunner even farther away from the urban core, out to Payson and Santaquin, and then up to Brigham City. It's easy to forget sometimes in the Salt Lake Valley that Utah is not just a red state, but a very red state, and that very conservative policies and ideologies drive not just our fiscal patterns, but also the way that our state develops. One of the ways that this amazing transit system that we have, one of the ways it was built out in such a conservative environment, is a fairness principle, that no city, no matter how big or small, if they are getting a train station, they will get the same train station. No one gets a favored treatment. None of the suburbs will need to subsidize a massive transit center downtown. Everyone gets the same thing. Bare concrete platform, a little shelter from the elements, a clock to show when the train's coming, and walkways over to a bus loop and a parking lot. That's basically it. That's all any station will get. If there's stations that have extra bits to them, like the South Jordan station, which has a nice clock, that's paid for by the city of South Jordan. The Provo Central platform has a nice piece of artwork on it. That was paid for by the city of Provo. None of the stations have embellishments funded by UTA, which makes the current headquarters building kind of an exception. UTA could have rented office space downtown, or they could have built their new office tower someplace farther away from their passengers, like their current headquarters is on the opposite side of the railroad tracks, to preserve a division between the UTA staff and their riders. But I admire how they've put their transit hub right at central stations, where people can access the building easily and make use of the amenities. That's an amazing show of goodwill by the UTA. But it also shows that UTA shouldn't necessarily be the ones promoting the Rio Grande plan. That would go against their fairness doctrine. I wish they could be a little more supportive and say the Rio Grande plan is an interesting idea. We'd certainly run our trains to the Rio Grande Depot if we could, if someone else led the way. They haven't said that, and I wish they would, but at least they haven't been dismissive. And they shouldn't be, because that's not their operating practice. It's not their business model. They offer the same amenities to every city, regardless of how big it is. And that brings up the issue of where is Salt Lake City stand in all of this? Why was it the Salt Lake County Council that endorsed the Rio Grande plan and not the Salt Lake City Council? Now, I can speak to the City Council because I've worked with them closely for the past 3 years. Dan Dugan in particular is a major supporter of the Rio Grande plan. Without him being so receptive when we first pitched the idea back in 2021, this plan would not nearly have come as far along as it has now. We can't express enough thanks to him and the rest of the Salt Lake City Council too for their support in ongoing events. The two previous in-person events that Via Rio Grande has held in 2023 and earlier, those were organized by the Salt Lake City Council primarily with us alongside, and the event that's going to happen next month in September, that is also being done primarily through the Salt Lake City Council. That event will be held in the Sorensen Event Center, or Culture Center, on the west side, and more details are to follow. So thank you to the Salt Lake City Council. But unlike the County Council, which is the active part of the government, and the mayor is the more reactive or regulatory part, the Salt Lake City Council works the other way, where they take direction from the mayor. The mayor is the active part, and the City Council acts as more the regulatory and reaction part. So where is Mayor Mendenhall stand on the Rio Grande plan, and why hasn't she endorsed it, or at least let the Salt Lake City Council endorse it yet? Well, I've met with Mayor Mendenhall on 2 occasions. The first was one of the more surreal moments in my life. I was at a campaign event for her. I was representing my company, an engineering firm I work for. We were trying to build better ties with her through the campaign event. And as she went down the line, shaking people's hands, she got to me and she pointed at me and said, "I know you. How do I know you?" And that was, again, a very surreal moment to have someone who you've seen on TV suddenly come to you and recognize you for something that you've done. The best part of that was that my boss was standing right next to me, and he was very surprised to see that the mayor recognized me. That was very fun. But Mayor Mendenhall recognized me from the YouTube videos I put out. One of her aides or one of her staff had shown her clips of my top 10 video, and she told me how excited she was for the potential of the Rio Grande plan. In my conversations with her, I wouldn't call her a supporter. She's a smart politician and knows where to draw her boundaries. I will point out, however, that after talking with her and after the conversation she had with the Salt Lake City Council as well, that she and her staff put in applications for federal grants to study better east-west connections. I was invited to write letters for 2 of those grant applications, the second one that the city actually won. And as part of the grant applications, the words Rio Grande Plan and Train Box were used, not just by me either, but by city staff. And in the federal government documents that awarded the grant money back to Salt Lake City, the Rio Grande Plan and the Train Box were mentioned specifically as well, which means that they are definitely going to be studied as a concept. Salt Lake City, as part of this $1.9 million that were won from the Department of Transportation, will also kick in $1.9 million of its own to match that study, the amount for the study. That is not an insignificant amount of money. That is a serious study being done by Salt Lake City to best determine how improving transportation infrastructure can also heal the east-west divide. The idea here being that the east-west divide is caused by transportation infrastructure, so by improving the transportation infrastructure we can also remove the poor aspects of that infrastructure, that being that it is a barrier to people living in the city. So that study will be significant, and it will be a major stepping stone for getting more federal money and funding for the Rio Grande Plan. It doesn't work like a request. You can't just be a mayor and say, here's something I want to do for my city, federal government, please give me money, especially when the amount you're asking for could be as high as several $billion. We have a reactionary federal government, which means that we need a purpose and proof before the government will act, and that's a very good thing. The trouble is we need to have that airtight proof first, that the Rio Grande Plan is a good, in fact, the best use of taxpayer dollars. And the way that we're going to get that is through this Reconnecting Communities study. That study was supposed to begin late last year. It still hasn't started as of right now, but I've had assurances it will start soon. It was delayed by several very annoying bureaucratic details about getting money out of the federal government and using UDOT to select a contractor who can perform that study on behalf of the city. But it will begin soon, so keep your eyes out for public comment periods for when that study begins. But one thing the study can't have is contamination, as it were, or a compromised situation. I've been in contact with several city staff members, including Joe Taylor, who spoke at the last Salt Lake City, at the last Rio Grande Plan event. And he's told me about how UDOT got into trouble on several occasions where they proposed a specific solution first. In this case, say the West Davis connector, the West Davis Corridor project, which is a branch of freeway that comes off of I-15 just south of Farmington and heads out west to the Great Salt Lake area in West Davis. That project had been pitched 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago, over a decade ago, and then the studies were done. and lawsuits flew like crazy because you can't lead with a solution. You need to prove that yours is that the solution is the best solution for a specific problem. Lead with the problem, not with a solution. That freeway only just ended up getting opened just earlier this year after it had been delayed that long. We cannot let the Rio Grande plan get delayed by that long. If we lose a decade, well then the Olympics will come and go and nothing will have happened to our transit infrastructure downtown. That would be the worst case scenario. Not only that, but it may not ever happen if all the money and goodwill and support from the public gets sucked out over a protracted lawsuit. That would just be the end of all efforts for the Rio Grande project for now, for the foreseeable future. And I wouldn't say that it's just a probable outcome for the Rio Grande plan, or even likely. I would say it is extremely probable that lawsuits will be filed if the study appears to be compromised. I have, since the Salt Lake County vote happened, I have personally started to receive letters from local property holders who are opposed to the Rio Grande plan, and they've asked me personally to stop talking about it because they think it will hurt their property values and access to their personal property. And to that I say that I am sorry that this is going to cause personal disruption and access to your property. I don't mean for this plan to be harmful to anyone, but I'm not going to stop talking about the Rio Grande plan. I'm going to work this problem until something happens, until we get results, because I feel that the Rio Grande plan is the best solution, perhaps even the only solution, for healing the East-West divide and helping our city grow into the kind of place that I want to call my home. So I'm going to do my very best to keep the study uncompromised, and the Mayor Mendenhall is doing the same as well. If she were to come out now and say that she supports the Rio Grande plan, that's the same as UDOT a decade ago, putting the solution before the problem. We need to let the study run its course. We need to answer the questions when the public comment period opens as to what's the biggest issues in the East-West divide are. We need to let them know that we are opposed to the railroad crossings in our city, in our downtown, to the big long freight trains that block us from moving through our city for dozens of minutes or even hours at a time. We are opposed to the frequent commuter trains that block the crossings and that also cause continual accidents and even fatalities with pedestrians at grade. We need to let the study planners know that we want those tracks to be moved, that we don't want to go to overpasses or underpasses. We want our city streets back. We want grade separations. We need to let them know that this is not we need to let them know this is not just our wish list, but this is the only solution that actually fixes the problem in our city. So pay attention to that public comment period. If we want the city to come along with the Rio Grande plan, we need to be the leaders of that city. We, the citizens, need to be the ones to bring the city along with us. We've got our work cut out for us, and I hope you'll come along with me. I'm Christian Lenhart. Thank you for watching.